Welcome to the Medical Support to Irregular Warfare podcast, an initiative to discuss and educate the evolution of medical support in peace, security, and conflict in uncommon environments. Points, perspectives, and opinions voiced here are solely those of the contributors and do not represent any formal association or government entity. We do everything possible to ensure the information and discussion is sound, comprehensive, and from the most credible sources. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Medical Support to Irregular Warfare podcast. Today, I would like to introduce Mr. Michael Voet for a better understanding of global medical logistics. Now more than ever, it is essential to understand these systems in an era of logistical chains, geopolitical risk, and an ever-shrinking world. Michael began in 2005 as a member of 3rd Paracommando Regiment and NSOCM within the Special Operations Regiment of the Belgian Defense Forces, with multiple deployments to Africa, Afghanistan, and Lebanon. A civilian EMT and a graduate of the exceptional Canadian SOMPT program, he also served as a member of the Special Operations Resuscitation Team. He then left service in 2021 to take up medical industry roles in leadership and logistics, greatly expanding his perspective of the challenges now and in the future. Michael, you are presently a rare animal, going from active service member who transitions successfully into medical industry role. This change is not easy, and I have great respect for that, so I'm happy to have you represent Belgium and your past so well. Welcome to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. That was way too kind. Thanks.
Not at all. The subject today and our goal is a better understanding of global medical logistics and the risks posed to them. In this area of geopolitics, we both agree a greater understanding of this will not only develop strategy, but it will also drive a greater appreciation in treatments, care, and flexibility. Michael, why is this so important to military and security medical communities? What is the so what factor, sir?
Even the best medical professional in the world can only do so much without medical logistics. I was at an event a couple of months ago and I heard the medical leaders say, if we want medical logistics, we're just going to buy it. The question here is, are we? I think the medical logistical chain is way more vulnerable than we think it is.
This is exactly the type of grassroots understanding and perspective and communication in order to have strategic effects for the future. Mike, we're very proud of you and we appreciate your work. Ironically, this recording for the podcast is happening simultaneously with the American and Israeli attacks on Iran and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz affecting gas globally. So definitely parallel examples here, Michael.
Yeah, absolutely. And it affects our prices. It affects everything.
Okay, Michael, with that, may I ask you to go ahead and provide us a presentation, sir?
Yes, thank you, Mike. I'm going to present you the structural vulnerabilities in Western medical logistics, and then more specifically the strategic risks and the potential solutions on them. I'm going to start with a medical product that everyone knows, at least every medic, compressed gauze. A simple medical product, but widely used and known. I did a little bit of research about gauze a couple of years back, and I noticed quickly that a lot of brands manufacture their products outside of America or Europe. I can easily name 5 brands that develop or let others develop their products even at the same address. This example illustrates a broader structural phenomenon. Many components of modern medical gauze, from basic consumables to complex pharmaceuticals, are produced through globally disrupted supply chains. A little bit of background. Globalization of manufacturing accelerated after the Cold War. Western companies suddenly received access to a global production network. Production moved to regions offering low cost, lower taxes, and cheap labor, and maybe even fewer rules. At the end of the day, a company's goal is really to make profit. If you were a CEO, what would you do? Therefore, capitalism increased efficiency, but also our dependency, and with that, decreasing our resilience. The main structural risks can be categorized into three main domains. First of all, the supplier concentration, second of all, the geopolitical risks, and third of all, the environmental vulnerabilities. First, the supplier-related vulnerabilities. They are focusing on the risks of dependence on a few concentrated suppliers. We're briefly going to over our dependency on some active pharmaceutical ingredients, or dependency on critical raw materials, and the regional concentration of semiconductor supply chains. Medicines depend on APIs. APIs, active pharmaceutical ingredients, are active components of medications. Without these, it would not be possible to develop pharmaceutical products such as medications. China and India are dominating this market. To give you an example, 50% of the tetracyclines and 90% of global penicillin is made in China. Even pharmaceutical manufacturers located in India, one of the world's largest producer of generic medicines, depend heavily on the Chinese chemical parts to develop the APIs. Estimates suggest that more than 2/3 of the key starting materials used in Indian API production originate from China, which is a significant amount. The concentration production of APIs make that supply chains are very vulnerable. Securing pharmaceutical supply chains has become a national security concern in several Western countries. Some other supplier dependencies. Let's start with rare earth elements. Let's take dysprosium as an example. Dysprosium is a rare earth element used in magnets of MRI scanners. China accounts for around 98% of global dysprosium production, which is basically a monopoly. Semiconductors. The vast majority of the world's most advanced semiconductors lies in one region. Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, and China, all combined, they have a monopoly on semiconductors. These products are used to build patient monitoring systems, implantable medical devices, wearables, and so on and so on. Both supplier dependencies creating geographically single point of failures. Geopolitical risks, a second structural risk. Global supply chains operate in a world where major powers are increasingly competing with each other. This comes obviously with geopolitical risks. Examples of this are trade tariffs on the farm industry, for example, regulatory barriers like the ETS system in Europe, and export restriction to critical medication. The possibility that essential medical supplies could be used in political leverage cannot be ignored. It happened already last year when China limited the export on some rare earth materials to US for some periods. Although the deliberate weaponization of medical supplies remains speculative, it could have a devastating effect on Western nations' healthcare system, as far as the complete collapse of it, really. Ensuring secure access to essential medical products, therefore, is important for national resilience, I think. Environmental and logistical disruptions. 80% of the global trade volume moves by sea. That's a significant amount. There are several critical maritime choke points, from which we talked already before about one, that play a central role in global trade. Examples from those are the Suez Canal, the Panama Canal, the Strait of Hormuz, and so on. Disruptions at these locations affect supply chain worldwide. A good example of these is the 21 blockage of the Suez Canal by the vessel named Ever Given. The incident stopped maritime traffic for 6 days, delaying hundreds of ships and disrupting global supply chains. Also, climate change will increase such disruptions. Drought have already reduced shipping capacity through the Panama Canal, for example. As production is increasingly concentrated in distant regions, the length of supply chains increases the chance of logistical disruptions. Let's take a black swan event as an example. Everyone knows this one. Hurricane Helene at the end of September 2024. A healthcare company based in North Carolina produced about 1.5 million bags of IV solution every day. Hurricane Helene flooded their site, forcing the site to halt production and triggering a nationwide shortage of IV fluids. The plant produced about 60% of the US supply of IV solutions, and the shortage lasted for about 10 months. This case shows the vulnerability as a side effect of capitalism. Single source suppliers are also single point of failures. Now, what is the impact on military medicine? Imagine a scenario where NATO deploys 800,000 people in preparation of a large-scale combat operation. It is fair to say that despite all our preparation that we do currently, the demand for critical medical supplies will peak. Since we are reliant on specific APIs, raw materials, semiconductors, and other important equipment, I'm not sure that we will still have access to all those equipments, because the production of that equipment is geographically centralized on the other side of the world. Also, our current procurement policies are favoring low-cost sourcing over resilience. So it is hard for smaller local producers to compete with low-cost country manufacturers. The core issue is simple. Current systems are optimized for efficiency in peacetime, not for survivability during war. Now, what can we do? Some things are quite obvious. We should improve our resilience in medical logistics, of course, but on operational and strategic level, that is kicking in an open door. Everyone is talking about it these days. The last one, circularity as a resilience strategy, is a less obvious solution, but I think we will need to go into that direction. So what are the operational level considerations? I think that CPGs and medical procedures and protocols are developed with logistical perfection in mind. You don't find any CPG that states, what if you don't have tube X or medication Y? We assume that we have everything. So key measures include prioritizing robust and versatile medical equipment, so we can use it for multiple purposes, for example, or clean it and reuse it where possible. Another one is developing contingency plans for supply disruptions, and that is obviously stocking equipment at unit level, but that can also be trained medical personnel in improvised medical techniques. A less obvious one is implement circularity to increase self-sufficiency. Later on in this PowerPoint, we're going to go a bit more in depth about this. And then encourage out-of-the-box thinking. A less popular statement is, for example, can we use expired medications? And how long can we use expired medications? Such measures will definitely improve operational resilience. Now, some strategic measures. The first two are already buzzwords these days. Everyone is talking about it. Everyone is talking about strategic stockpiling, and yes, we need to decrease strategic dependency. That is, again, kicking in an open door, so I will not go into depth in those. But I think that a big part of the solution lies in implementing circularity as a resilience strategy. For example, there is more gold in 1 kilogram of smartphones than there is gold in 1 kilogram of gold ore. That is something to think about. Circularity in medical logistics. So let's go a bit more in depth about circularity in medical logistics. As for now, our supply chains are quite linear. It's really from raw material to making something out of it, producing something, to use it, to waste. It is a straight pipeline. So that means that the whole logistical chain is quite heavy. To increase resilience, we should make it more circular. On the image, you can see a circular model named the 9 R's of circularity. Circulation. What if we implement the 9 R's of circularity on our medical military logistical chain? You might end up with a model like this. Let's take reparation, for example, reparation of medical devices, of equipment. What if we could learn our soldiers to do field reparations to monitors, for example? That would decrease our logistical burden immediately. If it's not repairable with them, it can be sent to repairing service in the military and repair it over there to get it back into service as soon as possible. Of course, to allow field reparations, our medical industry should rethink the product, make it easier to repair, for example, make it a bit more guerrilla-proof. Another idea is the product as a service model, and then the company itself, the medical industry itself, stays owner of the product. Next to the manufacturing of the equipment, they would be responsible for the reparation, the refurbishment, and so on. This will encourage industry to make products robust enough for military conditions. This is only one of the examples. So the conclusion. This whole slideshow is not a call for deglobalization. It's rather one for adopting a realism. Western healthcare systems are vulnerable to disruptions, as we learned, and it has a couple of implications directly to military medicine too. Supply chain, supply availability has direct effect on survival rates and force readiness. The path forward, again, is no deglobalization. It is rather implementing realism, incorporating redundancy, geographic diversification, and strategic autonomy. Strengthen regional production, of course, is also something that needs to happen. And then last but not least, definitely not least, integrating circular supply chains to enhance our self-sufficiency, to keep as much as raw materials as possible within a certain region, within a certain ecosystem. Ensuring secure access to essential medical supplies is not merely an economical challenge. It is, in my opinion, a matter of national security.
Excellent, Michael. Thank you, sir. That was thorough, simple, and a clear understanding and good perspective from a former medic. One question we always... You tried to. You absolutely did. One thing we always try to ask on our subjects is what is one difficult question that has not yet been answered or solved on understanding strategic logistics?
As mentioned before, this is a hard and complex question, but as mentioned before, we don't push for implementing circularity into our military medical logistical chain. So I am convinced that this actually could work, that this is at least a big part of the solution, that this is going to increase our self-sufficiency in operations or self-sufficiency as a military force, 100%.
Yes, sir. You've mentioned to me before, separately from the podcast, that this could serve well in a convened working group, within a community.
Absolutely.
Okay. Mike, we also try to give always 3 big takeaways from every subject and every podcast for the audience. What are our 3 big takeaways here?
I'm only going to give you one, since I believe it's really a matter of national security for our Western nations. We do not know the intent of some regimes in the world. Based on what we've seen in the past, it looks like they are very aware of our dependency. Although the deliberate weaponization of raw materials and medical products remains speculative, it could have a devastating effect on our Western nation healthcare system. I mentioned that before. This may seem fatalistic, but given our dependency, it's not realistic, really. To quote Rosemary Gibson, and the author of the book China RX, the Western nations should start give priority to domestic manufacturers at price floors, give companies a long-term commitment, and provide certainty to our own industry.
No, sir, I would not consider that fatalistic at all, as I agree with you. That's definitely realistic in perspective and understanding. Thank you for that. Michael, separately from the subject, I'd like to take advantage of this time for you for just a couple of force welfare questions, if you don't mind. You are
No problem.
rare in our community, from a successful medic to a successful member of industry. My first question, I guess, would be, what's the biggest lesson you've learned in industry since leaving the uniform?
It's an interesting one. What surprised me the most is that the skills I barely noticed during service, during my time in the military, like cultural awareness or working in diverse teams, learning a language or learning a procurement system, how that works. These have become my biggest strengths in industry. They were so normal back then that you don't realize it how valuable they are right now. That is definitely the biggest lesson. You are valuable as a medic, absolutely, in industry.
I appreciate that. It's good. It's good for the community and our population to hear those words, Michael. So, back on subject, if we could, we would just like to restate why this information on global medical logistics is so important. For the medic, it makes you more aware and appreciative of those risks and reinforces the need to have pace planning at every piece of equipment and all of your supplies at the operational level, no matter where you may be. For that medical advisor or battalion surgeon, flight or ship surgeon, it could reinforce your thoughts of both including logistic into your local unit protocols or CPGs, as Mike recommended, and also having more thorough planning in your logistical systems at the unit levels. For our medical executives and logisticians, hopefully this information will again assist you in mission analysis and advocating changes for policymakers in solutions to these challenges, such as contingencies to logistics, mitigating those single points of failure, greater thought to improvise solutions, or maybe even recommendations in some level of national industry capacity for production of the most critical items. Michael, from myself and from the audience, I'm sure, thank you for your time and your expertise today. Good luck to you in the future, and we hope to cross paths again soon.
Thank you, sir. It was a pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your interest in this important understanding of global medical logistics, and we hope it will help inform your decisions and concepts in the future. The very best to you, to your work and families, and to our efforts in solving problems for irregular warfare. Thank you for listening to this MSIW program, and we hope that you will both participate and contribute to the notes or offer thoughts, requests, and suggestions via our email link. The best to you, your work, and the relationships and security this effort strives to impact.